Yeah. All right. Hi, everyone. Welcome to Working Group Call number 27. Today is Thursday, November 5th, and it's about 12:20. I'm here with a few members of the working group, and we're excited to get started and discuss a few meeting discussion items that have been on the docket for a little while. So we'll first start with quick stand-ups. I know we just did a bunch of personal stand-ups, but if there's anything that's a little more related to governance that you've been working on, please feel free to share those. So I can start. I haven't done too much related to governance. I was mostly waiting for review from the foundation on grant application, which we have gotten feedback on and we'll discuss later in this meeting. Another thing that I have been working on is just trying to figure out the best route to work on developer experience on the community side a little more. I know that some developer type issues have come up with this group, and they were even originally a part of our grant application. So I've talked to some folks on the PBC team, like Alex and Joe, about what we can do for developer experience, especially leading up to the mainnet launch. And I have some ideas, mainly around maybe starting a working group, but also getting some grant funding for that as well, which has come up in this group. So I just have a few scattered notes, nothing that I'm ready to share on screen yet, but we can discuss that. I probably should have put a meeting discussion item on the list for this, but can always discuss it in a couple of weeks. But yeah, that is my stand-up. No blockers at the moment. And I'll just move on to Jason now. Jason, if you have any stand-ups you'd like to share.
Sure. So coming off our last meeting, one of the bigger things I've been working on is the standard operating procedures. So I have that as part of a draft pull request here that I'm putting a link into the chat for. And you can see a copy of the document. Let me get back to my link here on my repo, which will hopefully be done this week. I've got a few things I wanted to tidy up in there, but we're going over just basically how to set up a call, what is done before, what is done after, and all the basics that are involved with that. And the other item that's assigned to me that I still need to work on, we were having some issues with links to documents coming out of our Docsify pages. So I'm going to put that on my list to look at as well. It's something that I expected to get to by now, but I haven't yet. But I'm definitely going to make it a priority to look over, since that affects anybody trying to look into basically any linked documents. Like if there's a PDF or something else local, it wasn't coming up, and it should be a pretty quick fix as well. So I'll be looking into that one. Otherwise, I don't have any blockers at this point, and just excited to keep things moving and to hear some more about the grants.
Great. Thanks, Jason. Jude?
I don't have anything to report. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's okay. Harold, I you kind of went into this in your personal update, but do you want to do a very quick recap of what you've been working on?
Yeah. In the stand-ups, the pre-stand-up stand-ups, I mentioned that I got some feedback from Ronnie Glash, who has offered to help us with our systems prototypes on the tour wampum side of the proposals that we've introduced here. I've also officially reached out to Tomas Diaz. I haven't gotten any response from him back, but he may be busy. I know that they just had the Fab Summit, and I don't know, he may be on vacation or something like this, but hopefully we get some correspondence from him soon, either in the GitHub or bring him into one of these meetings. But it's exciting to be able to begin the merging of the networks, hopefully. But even then, we've also reached out to a platform within the Fab Academy network that allows for customizable workshops. And even in the beta version of this grant program, we should be able to get some nice prototypes spit out of these type of workshops or programs or customizable programs that we can put together. So it's been exciting to reach out to these folks, and I'd be happy to report back anything that comes out of those reach outs, and reporting the follow-ups. But also I've started to put together what the grant can look like, going over the risks and whatnot, deliverables, and thinking of timeframes involving all of these folks. So that's a brief stand-up on my part.
Great, thanks, Harold. Looking forward to seeing the progress on the grant application as well.
Yeah.
Dan, do you have anything governance related you'd like to stand up on?
Nothing, sure, thanks.
Ryan?
Just that I've been talking to a number of people. Harold and I talked about the grant applications there and got more of them coming in after the demo day. So if anyone has any other ideas on their own, you want to reach out and chat about them, please feel free. Also going to be the forum, you can use that too if you want to like post in. There's a Stacks grants category, so you can post in there if you want to get feedback on an idea and see what community thinks too before you like stick it as part of a full application. So that way it doesn't feel so heavy if you just want to like talk about an idea rather than having to put it right onto GitHub. It feels a bit more serious, you know what I mean? So the forum is a good place for that too. Ideas around that too. And I'm around if anyone needs help. But other than that, on governance stuff, I don't have any updates.
Great, thanks, Ryan. By the way, the demo day was great. I thought that was such a good way to showcase the work that folks were doing to the community. And that's definitely something that is relevant to this group for future grant applications.
Yeah, I think it'll be really cool because when the governance committee presents the demo day, which would be ideal if they did, then talking about like the can't be evil values and stuff, and working that all in and everything that would be really interesting, I think, for a community to hear and important. So
yeah, thanks,
for
Ryan.
instance, it's only one of the things that you guys do that are really fascinating. So yeah.
Brittany, do you have any stand-ups? I realize you may also be giving the foundation update, so this can just be a quick thing on what you've been working on in general.
Yeah, just been working towards the launch of Stacks 2.0. So as a foundation, I think we have an opportunity to just help support educational materials, things like that. So we're working on a wish list of grants for people to be able to get involved to help with, some of the nice to have things at the launch of Stacks 2.0. Everything from like tutorials around how to use Stack or how would you get started with mining to more like bug fixes and things like that. So yeah, just been trying to compile all of those open items and make sure that the grants program is running smoothly. We definitely, we had a lot of grants in the beginning. This past week, we had a fewer number of grants. So the other thing that actually Ryan's been working on in tandem with other members of the team is just how do we get more people aware of the grants program and more people applying. So if people have thoughts on that, happy to take that chat in Discord as well.
Cool, thanks, Brittany. Any blockers on what you're working on?
No blockers yet. Thanks.
All right, great. Thank you for those stand-ups, everyone. I think it's a really good way to get a snapshot of what everyone's working on. So next we can go into more comprehensive foundation updates. And I assume Ryan, Brittany, or Jude, you'd like to give those?
I know from my end, the things mostly the demo day, and then we're just working on getting more people in. So I don't know if anything more comprehensive than what's already been brought up, but if Brittany or Jude do, then go ahead, of course.
Yeah, I think we've covered most of it from our updates. Thanks.
Okay, thanks, everyone. So we can go into action items then. I think, Jason, you went over a few of these. Is there anything you want to, should we just go down the list, or would you like to go down the list and give an update on any of them, or do you think that's the best use of our time here?
Just real quick, the two that I addressed in my stand-up, I've got, actually, if you refresh the page too, I closed out number 102 since we've already submitted the grant application just now. And then 104, that's me working on those broken links. And 48 is related to the pull request that I have open. So those two are taken care of. As far as, I'm going to kind of jump around the list a little bit here. Number 79 with GitHub pages and the subdomain. I would like to make progress on that, but it's not a huge priority thing, especially with Stacks
Mhm.
2.0, obviously taking preference over everything else. And the collaboration with MetaGov, though, I am less familiar with that one. So let's go ahead and jump into that issue and take a look.
Okay. I think this was a suggestion from Lane. Right. This was inspired by our discussion of the community voting mechanism. So I think that sparked something in Lane about MetaGov. He said that there's some interesting resources and tools we could use, and this is pending our grant application being approved. So I think it doesn't feel like there's any immediate action on this or anything that we can discuss. I'm hoping that within the next couple of weeks, our grant application is approved and Lane can jump on the next meeting and talk about the next steps of this. Does that sound reasonable?
Yeah, that sounds good to me.
Okay, so we'll leave that one. Do you want to go over these remaining ones, Jason?
Sure. So the last one we have on the list there at the bottom was the meeting conference software. And we talked a little bit about this in the last meeting, as well as in our little sync that we did before the meeting. Do we have a dedicated Zoom account from the foundation at this point?
I just pinged Ryan about this actually, and I think Ryan is looking into one that the community can access for this working group.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So I'll do that. It might be so. Brittany, if you have any ideas on that, is it a? I don't know if you recur monthly or like a yearly payment, just the community would have a Zoom account to use. I don't know if that would qualify under a regular grant or not, or how that would fit.
Yeah, I think that we're open, so we don't have a precedent on like what works best here. But I do think we can sponsor a Zoom account that maybe is just from the foundation side, and so it can be more like a public resource instead of just a specific grant, unless there's a team is using it for a very like specific purpose and they want to include the cost of a Zoom account in their grant. So I think just funding a general Zoom we could do, but if it's a very specific, then that could be included just as part of the grant.
I think it's a general thing from the sounds of it, Jenny.
Yeah, it is general, in which case we would have to come up with some ground rules for use and on who can access it and at what times. But assuming that it's okay from the foundation side, I think the governance group can take that on as an action item, just putting in place some ground rules for actually using that.
Yeah, it probably fits into with some of the code of conduct work of just, I know it's like more of like a public utility, but, so it might be more specific, but some of the general codes of conduct I think would apply as well.
Right. Okay. So I'll make a note to include that as an action item just after this meeting so we're not distracted. But it looks like we've made some progress on that. And was that it for action items, Jason?
Yes, yeah, that covers them all.
Okay, great. So now we'll go into meeting discussion. I'm going to stop sharing my screen. I feel like Juliet is trying to join and she's in the waiting room. So 1 second. No, I was wrong. Okay, we'll go back to this then. All right, so thanks to Juliet, we actually have these as meeting discussion items. So this came up as feedback from the grants committee on our application for the code of conduct and voting mechanism. So we can just go into this one first. But it was basically that, well, Brittany, you sent a comment wondering who would actually be leading these projects, which I think is a very legitimate question. And it's worth discussing with the group whether there's anyone here who would like to do those projects or whether the there is a process we want to undertake to actually identify a suitable lead for these. So we would need someone to lead the project on testing a voting mechanism and someone to lead the project on developing a code of conduct, and maybe just a general lead to make sure that there's progress being made on both of those streams. So I'll open it up to discussion.
Yeah, the process of deciding if it seems interesting, if there's been some thoughts on that already. I'm interested, I'm open to discussion on this. I don't know if anybody else has any ideas on what a process like that could look like. We could also just, I guess, uh, volunteer, those of us that are here. I think that I'd be comfortable taking lead on the voting mechanism, but I'm also, I think, most comfortable if we, if there's a process that everybody's comfortable with in deciding who does what. I don't know.
That's a real chicken and egg question right there when we're talking about it, having a voting mechanism or deciding on one, right? But I do think, hey, I would voice that, voice that in the discussion item just as a comment in the issue. And we can definitely bring it to the Discord and just try to see if there's any blockers to either having people who volunteered or who were nominated kind of take those lead positions and everything else.
The comment you want to make it, can you sum up your comment, Jason? This here.
Oh, just that Harold's interested.
Okay. All right. We'll have to, yeah, I think in previous discussions that we've had on this proposal is that this proposal is meant to kickstart a couple of efforts on the governance front. And because we don't actually have a voting mechanism yet, there isn't like a legitimate way to have the community vote on someone to lead that project. Like Jason said, it's a little bit of a chicken and egg problem. But I think the expectation was that either folks within this working group or folks who've worked with this working group would be willing to take lead on these projects. It's not that anyone here is obligated to, but given our experience with governance and given the time that we spent on the actual proposal, it would make sense for someone from this group to lead one of these project streams. And obviously anyone in the community is able to participate in getting those projects done. But from the last discussion we had, it sounded like these leads would be project managers to ensure that we actually deliver on these streams. So I feel like some folks in this group have expressed interest. So Harold, thank you for stepping up for the voting mechanism project. And I think that you would be doing a little bit of work with Jude on that. So there would be some support there. And I don't want to speak for Juliet, but I feel like in the past she's indicated some interest in taking the lead on the code of conduct, which obviously I would be fine with. I guess the discussion or the thing that's up for discussion here is, are we okay with sort of just defaulting to folks in this group who want to take the lead on these projects?
Yes.
Thank you, Dan. We've got a yes from Dan. Or actually, are there any major objections to that? Is there a fear of that seeming unethical?
No, I think we're all here to help. And I think that's why we come to the meetings and that's why we've been a part of everything. I know that, you, me, and Dan have also had conversations around that code of conduct and really wanting to get something there. I know Philip felt really strongly about it as well. So I think we just need to tap into who's going to be on the actual paperwork or who wants to really take the lead on that. And from my perspective for the code of conduct, I'm concerned about my own time, just because I am pretty slammed with other things, but I am very interested in the subject. I do want to help out and find ways to contribute. So I didn't step up just yet to say I would take lead or anything, but I'm definitely going to be involved, and I'm looking at that this week to see if that's something I can do.
Cool, thanks, Jason. Well, so it sounds like there are no there are no major objections with this group sort of selecting from this group for project leads. I think in the interest of time, we can probably just take the time between this meeting and the next meeting to just asynchronously work with each other to see who would actually like to take what, and have that updated and decided by the next meeting, preferably earlier, so that we can get a start on these projects. But does that sound okay to everyone? We don't necessarily need to decide on this meeting.
Yes, I agree.
Great. All right. So I'll update these afterwards. This has already been, I should close this actually.
Refresh.
Oh, you did. Okay. Thanks, Jason.
Sorry, I was doing that while we were going through some of the initial ones. So it's I tried to close them out as soon as I recognize them.
Okay, no problem. Okay, so I can just add an update to these right after the meeting. This one, we had this proposal from someone who hasn't attended any of these meetings. We can look at it if we want to.
I was going to suggest for everyone's time, we did a pretty in-depth overview in the last meeting of each of these discussion items. So I think at this point, if anybody just has any updates or anything they'd like to share related to one of the discussion items on the list, we can move forward with that. As long as nobody sees any blockers to that. And of course, if you have any questions about any of them, we can pull them up too, but I don't think we need to go through every single one every single time as well.
Great. Okay. Yes, I guess we can just quickly skim through these. I know we'll want to discuss this, Harold. Are there any other action items that stand out to folks that we want to discuss? All right, okay, sounds like there are no questions right now. So why don't we go into this one, because I know Harold is here and can actually speak to this issue. So are there any updates, or well, you have given some updates, Harold. Is there more that you'd like to say about this and questions you'd like to ask the group about?
Yeah, I'd like to open up any discussion if anybody has recently looked at these proposals. I should be adding a grant that may be more concise than the things linked here. It may be a little bit clearer for folks to dive into. Yeah, the most up-to-date thing I have is just waiting on feedback so I can get a little bit, or waiting on returned emails from folks that will actually be, I think, heavily involved in what the grant would be going to and how these proposals will actually be sought out or finished, completed. With minimal experience in digital fabrication myself, and just barely getting my feet wet in systems design on the ground. Folks like Ron Eglash, who I mentioned before, it will be a tremendous help. And actually platforms that are offered through Fab Academy that have a lot of experience in systems design, and also leveraging indigenous modes of production in material development, as well as even they even dabbled in indigenous modes of organization. So I'm excited to be able to bring to the Stacks ecosystem what I think is a very valid research point of governance for long-term sustainability of the ecosystem, to be able to bring in what I think is often neglected viewpoints or approaches, models for governance or management of local and regional areas, especially in the context of local and regional data management. I think is a beautiful thing to have early in the ecosystem as Stacks 2 takes off, and there's all these possibilities with proof of transfer and maybe the first time that we see legitimate we'll have the capacity to see legitimate bottom up DAOs and whatnot. So I think that getting our feet wet in the research of how to actually make that happen is extremely important, and I'm excited to be able to merge these networks, because as an ecosystem that's focused on the internet, we know that the next iterations of industry and even world trade will largely be based on this internet thing. So to be able to start an indigenous dialogue, an authentic one, specifically a matrilineal council dialogue, I think is extremely important for the long-term dynamics of the ecosystem. And so if there's any questions that come to mind with just that brief description of what will go into these small systems prototypes ideas and how that relates to the network, I'm here, I'm all ears. I think we have, what, 15 minutes. So thank you, Jenny.
No problem, Harold. Do you, so thank you for that great overview of the work that you've been doing. For the actual grant application that you're planning to put together, what are going to be the main, I was going to say asks, I don't know if that's the right word, but the main things that you want to accomplish with that?
Yeah, so so things related to the Stacks ecosystem, just going through some of the dependencies and some of the risks in the grant. I was thinking, obviously we'll be, heavily dependent on folks like Jude and other folks like Frieger and Harini, even, who have done a lot of work on the beginnings of provenance. For us, a big part of what will be possible in these small systems prototypes is matrilineal council certification. So certifying goods, or being able to show in a small prototype that blockchain based systems allow us to certify goods in a way that says these goods come from healthy ecosystems and healthy organizations. And so this is a lot of times in working on this project, I've seen that the Stacks ecosystem starts to work on something somewhere. Someone has started to either voice what's possible. Jude is in the Q&As in the past shown a lot of what's possible with POX in the way of web browser based servers and going into even building Netflix or Facebook with POX, and getting some of those insights showed us what's possible with even MIDs and DAOs, right, with POX, hopefully. And so we'll be looking to the ecosystem for insights into how to make that possible, how to deploy blockchains, be a big part of the small systems prototypes as well. And so, yeah, we'll be looking back to the ecosystem constantly. I think for what's already being built a lot of times is what our small systems prototypes will be needed. So it's been nice to see that. I hope I answered your question there.
Yes, thanks, Harold. Any questions or comments from other folks in the meeting?
I noticed that towards the end there, one of your more recent comments, you were, are you still looking for people to help collaborate or set up that grant application? I know you mentioned some of the sections and you're starting to write it up. Are you still looking for help with that from the group or from the broader ecosystem, or is that something that you feel like you're getting through at this point?
Yeah, sure. I should be able to send out a link either in a forum post or in the Discord. Ryan, I reached out to Ryan yesterday, and he told me to get together something we can all work on in an async way. And yeah, I'm about 90% done with that grant, and just going over some of the deliverables, the grant application, I should say. And some of the blockers, though, like I said, is getting a response from folks like WAG Academy, who, like I said, I think the majority of the grant will be going to in terms of being able to spit out these prototypes.
Awesome. That answers my question. Thank you.
Are there notes from your proposal that we can review or like help review before you push a final version?
What was that? I missed the first part of it.
Are there notes or an outline of your proposal that we can help review before you push a final version?
Yeah, a lot of what will be in the grant is in the one pager.
Okay.
That are in this thread here that we're looking at.
Oh, great.
The grant will be the one that I'll link to as soon as this meeting is over in the Discord or in a forum, probably both. Will be maybe a little bit more concise, but the one pages are pretty concise as well. But yes, the deliverables what be more clear in the grant. So I'm excited to get that out to you.
Okay. Thanks, Harold. Yeah, it sounds like this is something that the group can review over the next couple of weeks as well, while you're working on your final version, and leave comments in the Discord chat. Does that sound good to you and everybody else? All right.
Yeah, thank you kindly. Thank you kindly.
No problem. All right, so we're actually pretty good on time here, everyone. We've got 9 minutes left, and I think that we can either close out the meeting or just raise any other thoughts or questions that folks have.
I had a question of something I was brainstorming which is related to governance, and I wanted to see what the governance folks thought of it.
Sure.
Which was, I think it could be valuable to speak to a biologist, looking at how the ecosystem can be designed to act like an actual ecosystem, like this healthy ecosystems exist in nature already, and kind of like mirroring that in like a biomimicry kind of way. So that's like, I know Jenny, you and I have talked about how my job title is Stacks Ecosystem Steward, but being a stewardship of the ecosystem itself and using natural systems to inspire that. So I thought maybe talking to a biologist or some sort of forestry expert around that, what a healthy ecosystem looks like, bringing people like that into the governance could be beneficial. I don't know, wanted to see what you thought.
Yeah, I mean, I may have linked something in the research somewhere in the research section of the repo here about ecosystem approaches in game theory, and I've introduced it to the community a couple of times. I wasn't too sure how much it applied, but it was looking at applying an ecosystem like analysis to different software software analysis of some kind that kind of went over my head in a lot of ways. But it seemed like it could apply to our Stacks ecosystem here in a way of the way it was speaking of, I don't want to butcher the language here, but keystone species, right? I was kind of thinking of it back in some of our original app mining attempts. I think some of the gist of the research was, looking at ecosystems, looking at game theory in an ecosystems approach where some species are like a honeybee, right? It costs nothing but is extremely beneficial and productive for the entire ecosystem, right? So these are extremely important to keep around. Whereas some things that seem like they can't go anywhere, like megafauna, actually are a little bit more, I don't know how to say it, but dispensable, right? Or you can't afford to over time lose these or have these things replaced. But yeah, so I think it may be viable. I can link to it again if I can find it. But I think it comes out of the same generative research group, generative justice research group that I've mentioned here before, and they do some pretty amazing work.
Okay, cool. Yeah, that'd be great. I'm definitely interested in reading that kind of thing. I think there's a lot of possibility on making a sustainable ecosystem for stacks by modeling it on actual natural ecosystems that are sustainably set up. And same thing for, like, I think the same thing for cities and all sorts of things. But I think for the stacks ecosystem could be really valuable, at least to assess it in that way. Since nature's been doing it for so darn long, might as well try and see what they're doing, what nature's doing so well, right?
Yeah, this sounds like the software paper that you sent me a long time ago, Harold. That actually really illustrated what an ecosystem could be like, and it does draw on what some of what Ryan has suggested. And to be honest, the first step in figuring this out could just be generating an ecosystem graphic. That's actually something I'm working on now, and I've actually talked to Rafi, who's working with the foundation, about this and trying to figure out an intuitive way to help folks in the ecosystem understand how it works, because I think that we're all sort of working through that ourselves. I've taken a look at a lot of the proof of transfer diagrams that community members have made, for example, and I think they make sense from the point of view of someone who's trying to understand proof of transfer themselves, but it's really not easy to grok when you see like a diagram with just a bunch of blocks and arrows. It's not intuitive what the incentive mechanism is. It's not intuitive who the players are, and it's not intuitive how it necessarily feeds the wider ecosystem. So it'd be great if we could probably open up a meeting action item for this, where you guys can drop some of your inspiration for just how an ecosystem runs, and it could really actually help inspire the graphic that we eventually commission for the Stacks ecosystem.
Okay, cool. Yeah, I got a great video that I watched that about stewardship that helps when I'm trying to get back thinking about those kind of things. So I can share that.
Yeah, thanks for that. Okay, so it sounds like that's the end of all of our action and discussion items. Just to recap, we've done all of our stand-ups today. We've had a great update from the foundation on the grants program, and there was just a great demo day that showcased some of the work that recent grant recipients are doing. In terms of action items, Jason has been awesome in working through those and just has a few more left, with something like the standard operating procedures being really foundational to the way that this group will continue to operate. So thank you, Jason, for working through those. If anyone is curious what those action items are, please feel free to look at the meeting action label. For discussion items, we went through first and foremost the grant application that we submitted. We got some feedback asking who would actually be leading the project streams that were included in the application, and those streams being the voting mechanism and the code of conduct. Our question is basically who is going to be leading those. Harold has graciously offered to, and stepped up to lead the voting mechanism project, which we don't sound opposed to at all, but we can discuss that on Discord if there happen to be any issues with that, and figure out how the setup would look like for Harold as the lead. And we also need a lead for the code of conduct, which we'll also discuss asynchronously in the next 2 weeks. And we've had some great discussion about the ecosystem and some inspiration for illustrating what that looks like, and how we can work together as independent entities within a larger ecosystem. Have I covered everything that we talked about today? I figured it would be good to do a summary at the end of every one of these meetings.
That was a pretty great summary, I'd say.
Cool. All right, thanks everybody. And we're great on time. So I will update this agenda right after this meeting, and the action items and discussion items that we've talked about. We'll also, of course, ping everybody in the next 2 weeks with reminders to update their issues. Harold, we're looking forward to seeing progress on your grant application, so please feel free to send that in Discord, and we'll see everybody in 2 weeks or so.
Thank you.
Thanks,
All right,
everyone.
thank you, everybody.
Bye.
Thank you kindly, everybody.